The fluorescent lights of Murphy's Diner flickered slightly as I wiped down table 7 for the third time that evening. My reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser showed exactly what I'd seen in the mirror that morning: plain brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup except for a swipe of chapstick, and the same navy blue uniform I'd worn for the past 4 years. Nothing special. Nothing worth a second glance. That's what Derek had said anyway, back when we were together. "You're comfortable, Maya. Like an old sweater." At the time, I thought he meant it as a compliment. It was a Thursday night in downtown Chicago, the kind of evening where the March wind cut through your coat and made everyone walk a little faster. The diner sat on the corner of State and Madison, catching the overflow from the fancy restaurants nearby when people wanted something cheap and fast. We got theater crowds, college kids, and occasionally groups of guys in expensive suits who'd clearly started their evening somewhere with better lighting and craft cocktails. A group like that walked in around 8:30. 5 men, mid-30s, designer everything. The kind who'd loosen their ties but keep their watches on display. I recognized the type immediately. They'd order burgers, tip okay but not great, and treat me like I was part of the furniture. I grabbed menus and headed over to their booth near the window. The tallest one, dark hair styled with that intentionally messy look that probably took 20 minutes, was already scrolling through his phone. Another guy with broad shoulders and a Rolex that caught the light was laughing too loud at something. The one on the end had kind eyes, I noticed. He smiled at me when I approached. "Welcome to Murphy's," I started, setting down the menus. "Can I get you guys started with drinks?" The tall one barely looked up. "Yeah, we'll need a minute. Maybe some water for now." His friend with the Rolex nudged him. "Come on, Blake, don't be boring. It's Parker's promotion. We're celebrating." He turned to me with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Bring us a bottle of your best bourbon. Actually, make it 2 bottles. We're going to need it." I nodded, scribbling on my pad. "Any preference on the bourbon?" "Whatever you've got that'll get us drunk fastest," Rolex guy said, and the others laughed except for the kind-eyed one, who was reading the menu like it actually mattered to him. "I'll bring out the Maker's Mark," I said. "Be right back with that." The kitchen was understaffed as usual. Carlos was handling the grill solo while Jenny, the other waitress on shift, dealt with a table of teenagers trying to split a check 8 ways. I grabbed the bourbon bottles from behind the bar where Tony, our bartender/owner, kept the mid-shelf stuff. "Table 12, I told him. Celebrating something." Tony glanced over at the group. "Rich boys slumming it. Watch yourself with that one in the middle. He's already had a few." I'd been doing this long enough to spot trouble, but I needed the tips. Rent was due in 5 days, and I was short by $300. The radiator in my studio apartment had died last week, and the landlord wanted cash up front for repairs. So I smiled, grabbed the bottles and a tray of glasses, and headed back out. They were louder now. Rolex guy was telling some story about a client meeting that went wrong, using his hands for emphasis and nearly knocking over the salt shaker. Blake was still on his phone, but he looked up when I arrived. "Here we go," I said, setting down the glasses carefully. I poured the first round, the amber liquid catching the diner's harsh light. The smell of caramel and oak filled the small space around their booth. "That's what I'm talking about," Parker said, raising his glass. "To finally making partner at the firm. Only took 7 years of my life." They toasted, glasses clinking. I stepped back, waiting to see if they wanted food yet. Blake took a sip and grimaced. "God, this is rough." He looked at me for the first time, really looked, and I saw something shift in his expression. Not interest. Not friendliness. Something colder. "You got anything better than this?" "That's our top shelf bourbon," I said evenly. "But I can check if we have something else." "Nah, it's fine." He took another drink, this one longer, like he was proving a point. I'll manage. I pulled out my order pad. Are you gentlemen ready to order food, or do you need more time? The kind-eyed one spoke up. I'll take the bacon cheeseburger, medium, with fries. Same, Parker said. Make mine medium rare. I worked my way around the table, taking orders, pretending not to notice how Blake kept staring at me with that look. I'd seen it before, the expression that said I wasn't quite meeting expectations. That I was somehow disappointing just by existing in front of him. When I walked away to put in their order, I could feel his eyes following me. My uniform hung a little loose. I'd lost weight over the winter, not from trying, just from stress and too many double shifts. My reflection in the kitchen's stainless steel showed someone tired, someone who'd stopped trying to impress anyone because what was the point? Carlos rang the bell 15 minutes later. 5 burgers, all up. I balanced the tray carefully, 5 plates loaded with burgers and fries, the smell of grilled beef and melted cheese filling my nostrils. The diner had gotten busier. A family with 2 kids had taken table 3, and an elderly couple sat by the counter nursing coffee and pie. Table 12 was louder than before. The bourbon bottles were half empty already, and Parker was in the middle of another story, something about a judge and a mistrial. They barely noticed when I approached. All right, gentlemen, I said, setting down the first plate in front of the kind-eyed one. Bacon cheeseburger, medium. Thanks, he said quietly, moving his glass to make room. I worked my way around, placing each burger in front of its owner. Blake got his last. Medium rare, extra pickles. He looked down at the burger like I'd served him roadkill. This is medium rare? Yes, sir, I said. Just like you ordered. He picked up the bun, inspecting the pink center of the meat with theatrical disgust. I said medium rare, not raw. Take it back. My jaw tightened. That's textbook medium rare, sir. But if you'd like it cooked more, I can absolutely have the kitchen. Just take it back, he interrupted, pushing the plate toward me. And maybe pay attention this time. Parker laughed into his bourbon. Blake's a perfectionist. Comes with the territory when you're closing million-dollar deals. I picked up the plate, my face burning. Of course. I'll have them adjust it. Back in the kitchen, Carlos looked at the burger and shook his head. That's perfect medium rare. What's his problem? Just recook it, I said tiredly. It's not worth the fight. While I waited, I could hear them through the serving window. Their voices carried over the diner's usual noise, booze making them louder and less careful. Rolex guy's voice cut through clearly. So Blake, when are you finally going to settle down? You're not getting any younger, man. Yeah, right, Blake said, and I could hear the sneer in his voice. You see the options around here? I'm good. Come on, Parker chimed in. What about that girl from the gym? The blonde? Too high maintenance. Blake's voice was getting sloppier. I need someone who's at least decent to look at. Standards, gentlemen. Standards. My hands gripped the counter edge. Carlos gave me a sympathetic look. Your burger's ready, he said softly. I took the plate, cooked exactly how Blake wanted it now, and walked back to their booth. My server smile was still in place, that muscle memory from thousands of shifts keeping my face neutral. Then I heard it. I was 3 steps away when Blake leaned toward his friends, not quite whispering, not quite speaking at full volume. That drunk middle ground where people think they're being quiet but everyone can hear them perfectly. Honestly, he said, gesturing lazily in my direction, she's so ugly I need to drink first before I can even look at her properly. His friends erupted in laughter. Parker nearly choked on his bourbon. Even Rolex guy was grinning. But the kind-eyed one wasn't laughing. He looked uncomfortable, glancing between Blake and me. I stood there, plate in hand, frozen 3 feet from their table. The diner sounds faded into background noise. The clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation, Jenny calling out table numbers, all of it became distant and muffled like I was underwater. Blake's words hung in the air between us. "She's so ugly, I need to drink first." The plate felt heavy in my hands. His burger sat there, cooked exactly how he wanted, with extra pickles, the way he'd demanded. Steam rose from the fresh fries. For years I'd been serving people at Murphy's. For years of forced smiles and swallowed pride. For years of taking whatever customers dished out because I needed the money, because bills didn't care about dignity, because that's what you did when you were invisible. But something shifted in that moment. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the $300 I was still short for rent, money I'd been killing myself for, serving people who saw me as nothing. Maybe it was Derek's voice in my head calling me comfortable like an old sweater. Maybe it was every single time I'd made myself smaller, quieter, less, just to survive. Blake reached for his bourbon glass, still laughing with his friends, completely unaware that I was standing right there. He brought the glass to his lips. I looked down at the plate in my hands. At his perfect burger. At the bourbon glass in his hand. Then I looked at the half-full bottle of Maker's Mark sitting on their table. My hand moved before my brain caught up. I set the plate down on the table with a loud clack that made all 5 of them look up. Blake's eyes met mine, and for the first time all evening, he actually saw me. Really saw me. I picked up his bourbon glass. The amber liquid sloshed slightly. "What are you doing?" Blake started to say. I poured it over his head. The bourbon cascaded down his perfectly styled hair, darkening it instantly, running down his face and soaking into his expensive white shirt. The smell of alcohol filled the booth. His friends sat in shocked silence, mouths open, frozen mid-laugh. "For your information," I said, my voice steady and clear, I heard every word. "And you're right about one thing. You definitely needed more to drink. So there you go." Blake sputtered, whiskey dripping from his chin onto his lap. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I untied my apron, the navy blue fabric I'd worn thousands of times, and dropped it on their table next to his ruined burger. "Nothing's wrong with me. But you? You're exactly what's wrong with people who think money buys them the right to treat others like garbage." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Blake was shouting, Parker was calling for the manager, Rolex guy was trying to dry Blake off with napkins. The kind-eyed one just watched me go. Tony emerged from behind the bar. "Maya, what happened?" "I quit," I said simply. The cold March wind hit my face as I pushed through the door. I had no job, no backup plan, and rent was due in 5 days. But my hands weren't shaking. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. If you're rooting for someone who finally stood up for themselves, subscribe to see what happens when you stop letting people make you feel small. Because this story is just getting started. I walked for 20 minutes in the cold before my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Hi, is this Maya Richardson?" The voice was male, tentative. "Yes." "Who's this?" "My name is Cameron Mitchell. I was at the diner tonight. Table 12. I'm the one who ordered the bacon cheeseburger. The kind-eyed one." I stopped walking, standing under a streetlight on Wabash Avenue. "Look, if you're calling to yell at me." "No," he interrupted quickly. "No, I'm calling because what Blake said was disgusting. And what you did was the bravest thing I've seen in a long time." He paused. "I'm also calling because I own a marketing firm downtown, and I think you might be exactly who I've been looking for." I laughed, a sharp bitter sound. "Is this a joke? Did your drunk friend put you up to this?" "I'm completely serious." Cameron's voice was earnest. "I've been trying to fill a client relations position for 3 months. Everyone I interview has the resume but no backbone. They tell clients what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. You just demonstrated more integrity in 30 seconds than most people show in their entire careers. I stood there on the freezing sidewalk, cars rushing past, not sure if this was real or if I'd walked into some elaborate prank. You want to hire me because I threw bourbon on someone? I want to hire you because you stood up for yourself when it cost you everything. That's rare. He rattled off an address. Can you come by tomorrow at 10? Just talk to me for 20 minutes. If you're not interested after that, I'll never bother you again. That night, I barely slept in my cold apartment, wrapped in 2 blankets. The next morning, I put on my only interview outfit, a gray suit I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago, and took the L to Cameron's office building. Mitchell & Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower overlooking Millennium Park. The reception area had modern art on the walls and furniture that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. Cameron met me personally. In daylight, away from the diner's fluorescent glow, he looked younger than I'd thought. Maybe early 30s. His handshake was firm. Thank you for coming, he said. And I'm sorry about last night. Blake and I went to law school together, but we're not close. Parker invited him. You don't have to apologize for him. I know. But someone should. He led me to his office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon. We talked for an hour. He asked about my experience, my goals, why I'd stayed at the diner so long. I was honest. Bills. Survival. Fear of trying something bigger and failing. Cameron leaned back in his chair. I started this company 5 years ago with nothing. Just an idea and a lot of rejection. The people who told me I'd fail? Most of them are still in the same place they were then. You know why I succeeded? Why? Because I hired people who weren't afraid to tell me the truth. He slid a folder across his desk. This is the position. Client Relations Manager. Salary, benefits, everything's in there. Start Monday if you want it. I opened the folder with trembling hands. The salary number made my breath catch. It was triple what I'd made at Murphy's. Health insurance. Paid vacation. A 401k. This is real? I whispered. Completely real. Cameron smiled. Look, I know it's sudden. Take the weekend to think about it if you need to. I don't need the weekend. I looked up at him. When did you say I start? Monday, 9 a.m. He stood and extended his hand again. Welcome to the team, Maya. The first month was terrifying. I'd gone from serving burgers to managing accounts for major Chicago corporations. Cameron paired me with Sarah, a senior account manager who taught me everything. Client presentations. Contract negotiations. How to read a room and pivot strategy on the fly. You're a natural, Sarah told me after my first solo pitch. That pharmaceutical company ate out of your hand. I just told them what they needed to hear. Exactly. That's the whole job. But the real test came 6 weeks in. Cameron called me into his office on a Thursday afternoon. There's a potential client coming in tomorrow. Big account. They specifically asked for you. Me? Why? He looked uncomfortable. Because they heard about what happened at the diner. Apparently one of Blake's friends has a big mouth. The story got around. My stomach dropped. Cameron, It's fine, he said quickly. Actually, it's better than fine. They said any company smart enough to hire someone with that much spine is a company they want to work with. The client was Hartley Financial Group. 3 executives in tailored suits who looked exactly like the guys from Table 12. I felt that old instinct to shrink, to smile and nod and make myself small. But I didn't. I walked them through our proposal, answered their questions directly, pushed back when their timeline was unrealistic. At one point, their CEO tried to lowball our fee structure. I leaned forward. "Mr. Hartley, you're not paying for the minimum. You're paying for excellence. If you want minimum, there are cheaper firms. But you came to us because you want the best. So let's talk about what that's actually worth." Sarah, watching from the corner, looked like she might cry with pride. Hartley signed a 6-month contract worth $200,000. That evening, Cameron took the whole team out to celebrate. We ended up at a steakhouse in the Loop, the kind of place with mood lighting and wine lists thicker than phone books. I was checking my phone when I saw him. Blake. 3 tables over with a different group of suits. Our eyes met across the restaurant. He looked away first. Cameron noticed. "You okay?" "I'm perfect," I said. And I meant it. Because the girl who'd served him bourbon was gone. The girl who'd accepted ugly and comfortable and invisible had disappeared the moment that liquid hit his expensive hair. In her place was someone who knew her worth. Someone who'd stopped waiting for permission to take up space. Blake paid his check and left before dessert arrived. I didn't watch him go. I was too busy celebrating with people who actually saw me. 2 years later, I stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in my own office. Not as big as Cameron's, but mine. The nameplate on the door read Maya Richardson, Senior Account Director. Lake Michigan stretched out before me, the morning sun turning the water silver and gold. My phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. "Turn on Channel 7, she texted. "You're going to want to see this." I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV mounted on my wall. The morning news was covering a story about corporate fraud. And there, being led out of a downtown office building in handcuffs, was Blake Henderson. The anchor's voice filled my office. Henderson, a former attorney at Whitman and Associates, has been charged with embezzlement and fraud totaling over $3 million. Authorities say he'd been stealing from client accounts for nearly 18 months. I turned off the TV and sat down at my desk. There was no satisfaction in watching someone's downfall, even his. Just a quiet acknowledgement that people who treat others as beneath them usually have their own demons to fight. My assistant knocked on the doorframe. "Maya, your 10 o'clock is here. The Northwestern presentation team. Send them in." 3 young professionals entered, nervous and eager. 2 women and 1 man, fresh out of business school, pitching their startup idea. I remembered being that hungry, that desperate to prove myself. I listened to their pitch, asked questions, and gave them honest feedback. Not cruel, but real. The kind of truth that would help them succeed. At the end, the young woman who'd led the presentation hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Is it true? The story about the diner?" "We heard about it from someone at Hartley Financial." I smiled. "It's true. Every word." "What made you do it? Like, weren't you scared?" I thought about that night. The cold wind. The empty feeling of having nothing left to lose. Terrified. But I was more scared of staying invisible. Of letting people like him define who I was. They left energized, and I knew they'd make it. They had that fire. Cameron stopped by later with coffee. Hazelnut latte, my favorite. "Heard you inspired some kids today." "Just paying it forward." He grinned. "You know Murphy's Diner closed last month?" Tony retired. Moved to Florida. Good for him. "And Blake?" Cameron's expression turned serious. "I heard he lost everything. The firm, his reputation, probably his freedom." I sipped my coffee, looking out at the city I'd conquered one brave moment at a time. I hope he figures it out. I really do. Everyone deserves a chance to become better than their worst moment. Because that's what I'd learned. That single act of standing up, of refusing to be diminished, had created ripples that changed everything. Not just my bank account or my title, but who I was at my core. Thank you for watching this story all the way through. If it resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible or less than, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people finding their courage in unexpected moments. And let me know in the comments what story you want to hear next. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept how others see you. That's when your real life begins.